Hi guys, welcome back to the Education Worldwide Student Podcast. I'm Jumana.
And I am Antonia, and
And
here we bring a new episode.
for today, we thought it would be very interesting if you guys got to know us a little bit more, but through a very different way. So we
Mm-hmm.
decided that we're going to be asking each other questions that we thought of.
Like a little interview.
A little interview. We will be going back and forth. I'll give her a question, she'll give me a question, back, forth, and you know, you guys will get our answers and get to know us a little bit more. Obviously, like there will be some stuff that you could take away from our experiences. Do not do what we did. I'm just kidding. That's all.
Yeah, and we hope that you like it.
Yeah. All right. So I think it's pretty chill that we get started. All right. So I'm gonna ask you my first question, which is, when did you know that you wanted to go into the medical field, and how were you sure?
I didn't always wanted to become a doctor or a nurse, anything related with health. It actually was being a pilot because I went to the United States and it was an only women flight, which is very special. And also the crew, like pilot and everybody, were only women. And it was very inspiring. So in that moment, I was inspired by them, and I really thought that being a pilot was my thing. And then throughout the years, your opinion obviously changes, and so did mine. And then I went full on teaching, which I feel that gets a little bit closer with health because you have to have a lot of patience and you have to care for the other person. So that kind of like more closer feeling with people started to begin. And then I got all of my inspo from my cousins and my aunt and uncle. They're all doctors. I come from a family of doctors and nurses. So then I started to listen to their stories. And obviously, I was older, so I was able to understand everything better. And I lived with one of my cousins at the time, so I knew all the sacrifices that he was doing on med school. And there's when I knew that I wanted to be like him and help people. You can't always do everything for them. Obviously, sometimes you will have to face a lot of discouragement, especially if you're a woman on STEM. It's very difficult
Definitely.
to people, yeah, to understand you and respect you. And for example, my cousin, she's a doctor, and sometimes they call her a nurse to kind of degrade her from her
Yeah.
position, which is obviously not very cool. So it's not all rise and shine, but that's the thing about helping others and having all of these experiences and meeting so many new people, and you can also specialize on so many things. It's so interesting.
Yeah. I think for me personally, like the medical field is something I think all of us at some point we consider it, but it becomes kind of like do I really have the guts and like the willpower to actually do it? Because me personally, no. I like the whole idea of anatomy and biology and all of that.
Yeah.
But I can't needles themselves, I can't. I'm terrified. I can't put one in someone. I can't get a shot or a vaccine without freaking out. So I don't have the guts. I like the whole like knowing the inner workings of the body and learning about it. Yeah, for sure. But again, with medicine itself and the
Yeah.
practice, no way. So I commend you for that, especially wanting to help people. That's an amazing, amazing thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot about vocation and not really money, even though we all know that physicians and nurses, it will depend on the country, but they make good money. It's not only about it.
The
And
nurses not
probably,
really, from what I hear.
yeah.
I think doctors, surgeons specifically make the most. But
Hmm.
nurses now, you kind of get into it, nurses are actually very underpaid, which is a very sad thing. Nurses and doctors, and they should be probably the most paid people
Hmm.
in our society because they literally keep us all alive, right?
Especially after the pandemic. I
And
think that we have to value them more,
yeah, we definitely have to.
especially
Yeah.
all the technicians in general. They're like, oh, you're not a doctor, so we're not gonna take you in consideration. But
Oh,
they're vital because the doctor is not the only person that assists people.
nurses are just as like useful and valuable to the, you know, the inner workings of a hospital and just to helping someone actually get better as much as a doctor. And I think we
Yeah.
as a society need to give them their credit, like pay credit where credit is due, for sure.
It's true. So now I have a question for you.
Okay.
What has been the most memorable or influential extracurricular activity that you have done in high school?
I think there's a lot, right? I did a lot of extracurricular activities just because I have a lot of interests and a lot of things that pique my interest. But I think for me, there were two. I would say three, but mainly two that were very interactive. That would be the debate club and the writing club. I like to write for sure. In fact, debate club was one of the things that kind of required me to write a little bit, be able to formulate an argument. I love writing. I think it's crucial for me as a person to be able to write. If I'm not able to write, I don't know how I will express myself too well. So writing for me is a very important outlet, not just like emotionally, but like physically. When I have any idea, I have to write it down. It's just, and I have to like get it, you know, explain it out, explain my thought process.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And then debate club, for me personally, throughout my entire life, everyone has told me, you're great at arguing. And then I joined debate club when I was younger. And then I joined it in our school. And because of that, it was one of the more like primary extracurricular activities that I joined.
Yeah.
These kind of like complex discussions with people, that for me has always been something that I've always wanted to do, not just like on a legal basis, but just on a humanitarian basis or just in every single aspect in every single conversation. I've always wanted to have like a seat at the table where I can genuinely discuss things with people and show them right from wrong, if there is a right or wrong in the discussion or like the matter at hand. I've always just wanted to have those kinds of really complex discussions with people and be able to kind of get my voice across, hear their voice, be able to be like to exchange. I think that's what makes us human beings, is our ability to be able to communicate with each other, interact with each other, and share our thoughts and our opinions with each other. That for me has always been like something that I've always wanted. And so debate club was kind of like my first step into that. And I think debate club would definitely be like the top contender. That and writing club, book club, I enjoy reading. This is something, yeah. And yeah, all the other clubs I enjoy as well.
Yeah, I think that debate club is very good for you, especially because if you want to go to the lawyer side, and for everyone in the school that wants to try things to see if later that works for them for the undergrad.
Yeah.
Maybe you get into the debate club and you realize, hey, this is not for me. Maybe I shouldn't go onto this, but rather another one. Maybe arts or any kind of like language or anything like that. So it's a very good thing that the school gives us. It's a very good tool that I highly suggest you to get involved with into clubs. You can also socialize, as we have talked in other podcasts. It's a great moment for all of us.
It's definitely, I think being able to kind of like pursue different hobbies and different things, it gets you on a path to self-discovery. And I think just because we're on online school doesn't inherently mean that we shouldn't have that, you know, ability or that opportunity or that privilege either, just because we're on online. In fact, I think we have a little bit of an upper hand because we're not interacting with people in the exact same environment as we are. We're interacting with people all over the world that grew up in different circumstances that we did, that grew up in different cultures that we did. So we're gonna get so much like so many different perspectives, and so just be able to interact with people all over the board. And I think that itself is a key factor to self-discovery and to finding out like who you are, what you think on your own, apart from the environment that you grew up in. So,
yes, it's amazing.
Yeah. I wanted to, this was kind of something that I always thought about personally. I thought I'd ask
Mhm.
questions just like, what piece of advice would you give yourself as a freshman, like when you first started high school?
To not worry a lot about the high school experience, this typical American experience that is shown to us in movies and shows. I feel like you have to lower your expectations a lot because life is not a movie. Sadly, it's not like that. And sometimes you're not even in the same country. You're not physically in the States, so you cannot compare yourself to that. That doesn't mean that you don't have to have any expectations at all, but just to lower the band a little bit, like calm down. It's still school. You have to do a lot of work. Don't worry a lot about socializing, going to parties, because it's not the primarily thing that you should be worrying about. It's
For sure.
grades first and then the rest. And also creating everything for your college application. So you
Mhm,
can balance things out, but always one is a priority.
mhm.
And well, I started high school online because of the pandemic, and my school was really not that good when it came to online classes. They were not prepared. Most of the schools in Chile were not prepared for
Mm.
having all of these kids on Zoom. Like, what do we do? So it was not very good, and that's why I found out that online school in that way was not for me. I have to find an online school that suits me, and this
Yeah.
school was the perfect option. And I feel like I was like a lot better when I got into the school because everything was more organized. My other school truly was a mess. We have no schedule. You have to send assignments until like 12 a.m. and then you have to go back next morning at like 8 a.m. So it was not very consistent. And here I can have my own consistency since the school is self-paced. So that has helped me a lot personally. So overall, I will say that not having the highest expectation ever and not comparing myself to other people or
For sure.
movies or things that are just not real and are not me.
Mm, I can see that, yeah.
Yeah.
I think for all of us, it's high school and the whole like high school experience kind of gets in your head because you watch it on TV shows. We're fed like American media, and that's not a bad thing, but we're fed American media, and because of that, we like get different expectations of when we go to high school, even if we're in a different country, like you said, or like like we want that whole experience that we see on TV shows and movies, even if they're not realistic. It becomes like something that we fantasize about or like romanticize. And I think that could be like something that disappoints you of high school, demotivates you. Yeah. But I agree with you. For me too, when I joined this school, my I started getting a lot better. So I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, my question for you is, if you could have a conversation with any historical figure, who would it be?
Oh God, this one's a trick question. It's not a quick trick question,
Specific.
but there's a
Yeah.
lot. I would say any civil rights leader, like
Mm-hmm.
personally, obviously not to show favoritism, but my favorite civil rights leader is Malcolm X. I a lot of the things he said I cannot not agree with. Like it is
Mm-hmm.
impossible for me to disagree with him. Everything that he says, everything that he shows, and everything that he stood for was something personally I agree with. And so I would love to have a conversation with him. But then there's like the other side where I would kind of want to have a conversation with someone I completely disagree with. And I would,
Agree to say.
someone just so out of the question, so far off. I would never agree with him or her just because of where they stood in society or like what they did in society. I was actually thinking about it when you said historical figure. I literally was like, if I had like a conversation with, say, a specific man in history, I'm not gonna say
Yeah.
his name, but he was a big part in World War II. Um,
Mm.
and obviously this is someone I 100% disagree with. Yeah. I don't know. I would like to see how that conversation goes. It's entire. I would love to see how that conversation goes. Obviously, me being, from where I'm from, not being someone who's white and in the specific category that he supported, blonde hair, blue eyes, very Eurocentric.
Yeah.
me not fitting in that category, I would love to see have just a conversation, and also being a woman that could piss him off. But me having a conversation with him, trying to, you know, get a sense of why. Because I don't inherently believe that everyone does things just for the sake of, there has to be some type of reason, like psychological reason. I would want to psychologically analyze that person. So
There are lots of whys on that specific matter that we're talking about right now. There are lots of whys and how and what was the reason.
But there's no good reason of why it happened. There's obviously there's no justification. So that to me personally is like, we're talking historical figures. I would either go with have a discussion with someone I fully support, like Malcolm X, or someone that I'm glad is kind of dead, like the other guy. So
it's true. You did a great turn for that question, honestly.
Yeah, it's a complicated question because you really have to think about it. Like, who in history would I want to sit down and have a conversation with? I also was thinking maybe some type of philosopher.
Yeah.
Someone in history that was just so smart and just so wise that could just say one thing and my entire mind would be clear and I will just have all the answers that I need from that one thing he said or she.
Mine, and I don't know, maybe you didn't thought about it, but Jesus is also a historical person, so
yeah,
magical encounter.
I don't know if we were getting religious. If we were getting religious, oh, forget everything else. I know exactly who I would say, which is obviously for me because I'm Muslim, the Prophet Muhammad. For me, I would sit down, have a full-fledged conversation, and never want to leave that conversation. I believe that would be the same thing for you and Jesus, so it's definitely something like that. But yeah. Now we talk a lot about school and the matters of how we compare online school and physical school. Sorry, I don't know why my mind is blanking the questions right there. But we also kind of try to also bring in the mental health aspect for you guys, the people watching, to kind of understand that the stigma around mental health should be lifted. There should not be stigma around it because it's such a natural thing. We as humans, we are gonna go through certain periods of time where we're not gonna feel our best, and that's okay. It's what we do with it, what we do after it, that matters. Are we really gonna dive deep into that sadness and that just negative emotion, or are we gonna try to work through it? That's the biggest thing. So I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with stress and anxiety and just issues regarding mental health in general?
Okay. I think that I started struggling really bad with anxiety in 2020, being in your house all day long. Even if you have a house, even if you have a swimming pool, it's still closed. And I was a person that barely spent any time in her house, only for sleeping and then barely eating breakfast and getting out. I was an athlete. I trained 8 hours. I was a synchronized swimmer. So for me, life was sports. And after everything was just shut down, it was very difficult to comprehend why and to kind of accept that I will have to be here. And I didn't know for how long I was gonna be in my house. None of us did. And we have a lot of doubts around this entire COVID thing. So there's when I think that I have started all the anxiety and stress came along with school. Not this school in specific, like the other school that I was in. That's when it really started to hit me. I think that high school puts a lot of pressure in yourself because you're like, okay, we're getting real. The grades that I had now really matter, even though I was always a great student. Now it was not only for the sake of the prize or maybe even bragging about, well, I am the first in the class or on top. No, now it's gonna affect directly to your future. So I think that that's when I started to feel bad and stressed and sad. I don't know if I can say depression, but I was very worried about all of the things that were gonna happen in the future. So I think that that's when I started to get really bad. Even though in sixth grade, when I did a major change from my first school that I was in for 8 years to this other school, I also experienced a lot of anxiety because I was new and I honestly never fitted in that school. It was not for me. And they had a completely different mindset. Also, where I live in South America, there's like a certain standard for a lot of people, way of being and looking like. So I really felt like I didn't fit there. We also don't have people from abroad, or it's not very international, not even universities.
Mhm.
So it's very difficult to find people like you, Spaniards. It's complicated. Sometimes cultures just don't blend in,
Yeah.
which doesn't happen in the school because Jumana and I get along very well, and our mother tongue is not the same. We don't have the same culture. We don't have the same religion. Still, we are friends. So
We're really good
this,
friends. And even like we find ourselves talking about how different we are and just like kind of relishing in how different we are and like appreciating it.
yeah,
Appreciating the difference between our religions, our cultures, everything that we really believe, like everything we generally believe in is fairly different, and the way that we were raised is fairly different, but we find certain similarities that kind of tie us, and we find how
mhm.
different we are kind of beautiful. Like it's a whole thing. And I have personally am grateful to the school that we're in for that. I don't think I would have gotten that experience had I not gone here.
Yeah,
Um,
me too. Especially here, like literally zero. And the most international people that you can find is probably Argentina, and their culture is not that different from us,
yeah, for sure.
for ours, and it's just really not very international. So different relationships and friendships from abroad makes you open your eyes
Yeah,
and see that maybe your reality and your society, it's not the only one. Sometimes it feels like it's the center of the world and this the end. This is all that I have, but really that's not. Also, traveling does that to you. For me specifically, I started traveling a lot on 2022, experiencing very different cultures, not only Spain, that I travel there, obviously familiar with me, but the north of Europe or different parts of South America and North America. And that's when you really get to experience different people and different backgrounds, and proving the rest that you can still have a friendship with somebody that has a different mindset or background is very positive. And I feel
yeah.
like that kills off the social anxiety that a lot of people may have, because it's
Mhm.
just you can blend in without being the same.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I think the way that we generally choose to deal with stress, the way that a lot of people choose to deal with it is by ignoring it. And
Yeah.
there's a certain mindset that a lot of people hold is like fake it till you make it, right? We'll just like ignore it, just act as if so you're okay and you'll be okay. And I think that holds some merit, but I don't think it's the healthiest way possible. I think with stress and anxiety and even depression, right? Because I believe depression is a spectrum other than clinical depression. Like depression is like just feeling sad. You could feel really sad sometimes, and but there is like certain, obviously, clinical depression, that's a whole different thing. But just the feeling of being depressed, that anyone can feel that. I think we generally just choose to, I think we should face it head on. And I think we should
Yeah.
find ways to resolve that, especially when you're like in an environment where you don't fit in. I think a lot of people don't understand how your environment can affect you so much mentally.
Yes.
It can,
Sometimes not you, but the rest.
yeah, I agree. It's like you you do everything you can and you haven't changed, but your environment has changed, and so it's changing you in the process. And with that, you choose like you realize that that difference, that general thing that's kind of become a burden on you, comes from your environment, not from yourself. That whole burden is not you putting a burden on yourself. It's you
Yeah.
taking the burden, which is your environment, and putting it on yourself. And that could become the issue. So try to deal with those emotions. And if you find yourself in an environment that feels like a burden, and if you find yourself in situations with people, or you just find yourself being around people that are burdens and just are not comfortable, like comforting, leave. It's okay to leave. It's fine.
Yeah.
Especially with friendships. Friendships are supposed to be comfortable. You're supposed to feel safe. You're not supposed to feel like heavy hearted or just like uncomfortable in general. So That's
Yeah.
one thing, you need to look for in your friendships going forward, is that you should find a safe haven within them. That's a very important thing. A very important piece of advice that I can give anyone is that your friendships should feel safe. They should be comfortable,
Yeah.
and beneficial.
Yes.
They should not be uncomfortable. And when they do feel uncomfortable or like a burden, like talking to the person you're friends with just becomes a burden, that friendship has run its course.
Yeah. If I could give you guys a tip, is to first address the problem. Why am I feeling like this? Because that's what I did. Why am I feeling miserable? Why? Well, I stopped doing any kind of activity, physical activity. I just went from 8 hours, which is crazy, to zero, nothing. So your body obviously is gonna react in a certain way, and your body is also going to kind of like disconnect, like what is happening, what is going on. So
Yeah.
when I addressed the problem, I was like, maybe I should start exercising or doing something or trying to find something that makes me passionate again. Then maybe I can get that spark back. And that's when I got it back. And it was actually when I traveled, because I finally had that freedom. Like, I am out, I am not in my house. This is not the end of the world.
Yeah.
So when you truly, when, as you said, kind of calm down and think about things and say, well, this is depression, or is it just that I am sad? What is the problem? When you truly address the matter is when you have some sort of power over it and can solve it.
Yeah. Very much so. Getting
Now
out
my
of
question.
topics.
Yes. So, what are some creative ways that high school students can give back to their community and make a positive impact?
I think one way that high school students can, obviously volunteering is something, donating, just doing everything you can. You could also set up like, certain funds or certain charities. Even if they're just on a local level, that could be very helpful to just the people in your community locally. You can set up a food drive where people donate canned food and things like that, and then you could donate that to a homeless shelter or wherever it may be, or just donate it around people that you find that are homeless. That could be something that helps give back to the community. Even
Yeah.
like I said, it doesn't have to be on a major scale, but you're doing a good deed within your community, and that just as easily makes an impact. Community cleanup, you could set those up. Just clean up around your community, make sure that the streets are clean. One, we don't need more pollution in the world. It helps the climate and just helps our environment in general. There are so many different little ways that we as teenagers could just help, but we
Yeah.
find it like a little bit of a burden too. We feel like it's not enough. But trust me when I say that little thing, it's enough. Donating to the homeless, helping the homeless. Where I was in the US, there were churches that you could, starting the age of like 12 or something of that sort, you could sign up and you could volunteer, and you'll be able to help like, people that go to that church for the food drive. They take food, when they need it. And that's also a very important thing. There's
Yeah.
so many ways that you could help. You could, do certain acts of community service, like I said, community clean, or like, local cleanup, community cleanup, and just many different things. You could choose. There's a system in the US actually. Obviously, these are things on the US level, because that's what I'm more educated in. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that there has to be equivalents, right, in
The
majority
Red Cross. I did
across.
things
Yeah.
with the Red Cross. It's a little bit difficult, especially, let's be honest, third world countries, maybe a little bit complicated because you also don't want to compromise yourself in any kind of dangerous position. But when you go with an organization and with people that are in charge, have previous experience, are older, you go on a safe environment to truly help the people that need it.
Yeah. One that I was thinking of, obviously this is in the US, but there are made like very high equivalencies around the world, and that is Best Buddies in the United States. It's a program within high schools, and you basically kind of become a friend to a person with a disability. This relieves the stigma that there's a lot of stigma around disabilities in the United States. This is something that I speak a lot for, that there is so much stigma around mental health and disabilities and just everything, you know, regarding that. And that is such a sad thing to see, that we put that type of stigma around that. You know, disabilities themselves, a lot of people don't know, but, you know, for example, kids with autism are extremely smart, and a lot of people don't know that. You know, and we just choose to focus on what we're portrayed again in the media and movies and whatever, that they are not intelligent, when in reality they are just as intelligent as we are, maybe even smarter, because the way that their brain works is just different. And I think we as a society have started realizing that, but also we have always kind of strayed away and stayed away from things that are different, and that could be an issue. So, you know, just kind of working towards inclusivity of all people, of all, you know, disabilities, capabilities, whatever it may be, genders, everything of that sort, all ethnicities and cultures, is a very important thing. You could always like work towards that, making sure that everyone feels safe and included, and just as if though, you know, they matter just as much as everyone else that's quote unquote neurotypical, if you will. I believe that's the term. Yeah, it's a very important thing to do. But again, other than that, what's also important is that you give back to your community in any way, whether it be helping people, you know, that are disabled, whether it's volunteering at a homeless shelter, setting up a community food drive, local cleanup, anything of that sort, that could always be a big benefit to your community. And even if you feel like it's not enough, it is enough, and it's doing something, at least you're doing something, right? There's people that just don't do anything, but at least you're doing something, and what you do matters just as much locally as it does matter statewide, countrywide, internationally, and globally. It all matters. So just the little things can make a difference for sure.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yes. I think that's pretty much it, you know.
Yeah, we
We
have come to an end.
have come to an end. This episode itself is a bit of a different episode. We decided to kind of have a conversation with you guys regarding certain things, you know, that
Yeah.
honestly we had the questions with each other. My favorite, honestly, question that you asked me was the history question, like which historical figure, because like I said, my mind, when you ask that question, goes in 50 different ways. I would go with someone I completely agree with, someone that could give me advice and wisdom, someone that I look up to, and someone that I hate, like I said.
Yeah.
But
Mine was the first one about the medical field, because sometimes, well, I have been saying that I wanted to go into that specific field for a long time, probably 6 years. So there's a point where you no longer question why do you chose it. So
mhm,
that really makes you think about, why am I going into this? And I obviously already thought about this for, as I said, like 6 years. So it's something that I want to do, but why? It always comes back. So
yeah.
now with your question, you make it come back.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing, to always remember why you're doing something. Personally, for
Yeah.
me, I was honestly thinking about it the other day, which is what prompted this question initially. I say I want to become a lawyer. Why? Why do I want to become a lawyer? I want to, again, being a lawyer on a humanitarian level, and you know, that is initially my end goal, to be able to make a difference internationally, globally, on a humanitarian level. That is my like top goal, is to be able to help people, not just like defense and, you know, criminal justice lawyer, but just to be able to help people in general, and to be able to understand people and to communicate with different
Mhm.
people. That's an important thing for me. And just again, like you said, to help people. There's people all over the world struggling right now, and especially right now, and it's an important thing to acknowledge that there's a lot of people struggling and, you know, going through a lot of hard times right now. And for me
Yeah.
personally, that's why I've always wanted to, you know, become a lawyer, is because seeing people struggle throughout my whole life, and that especially having a personal effect on me and my family, that becomes a very important, factor in why I want to do the things that I want to do. And I think
Yeah,
that as well
very
as for
important.
anyone, it takes, into account for anyone with what they want to do, right? If it takes
Yeah.
a personal toll on you, it becomes a bigger reason for why you want to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry we got a little depressing. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Educational Worldwide Student Podcast. Make sure to
Be sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned because the next podcast is gonna be very special and you're gonna like it.
we hope you
Very
like it.
festive.
Festive. For sure, festive. But yeah, we really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like she said, like, subscribe, all that jazz. And make sure to share this with your friends. And if you found this useful, hey, let us know. DM me. It's fine. Tell me, hey.
Share.
Or
Share.
you
If you want to be
cool. I
on
want
the
to
podcast,
Yeah.
send an email or
Send an email to the school.
Instagram, comment here, whatever is it.
Even if you're a
Especially if
parent.
you're not, we
Even
want
if
to
you're a
not
parent
leave.
and you want to be on this podcast, hey,
Yeah.
chill with us.
So-
We're pretty cool with that. If you're a parent and
Mhm.
you want to get on here and you want to kind of discuss things, that parents think and students, that's a good topic.
Yeah. Consider yourself invited. So
Invite
we'll
us.
see each other next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.